know that there's one view that it will change to whoever's speaking. Then there's another way where you can actually lock a particular person's screen. So I will let you do that if you're okay with that.
Yeah, I don't actually know how to do that, to be honest with you.
Oh,
That's
I do.
weird. Oh, yay.
As I say,
If you highlight the person whose screen, I think with the desktop version, if you have the 3 dots for the individual, it says pin this screen or pin this video.
I see pin video.
Yeah,
there we go.
Yep, and then that keeps just that video what is visible.
Okay, awesome. That's what I remembered, but I wasn't sure, and I'm always afraid to click somewhere and not be able to get back where I was. So thank you very much. I appreciate that. So apologize for all the stuff that is randomly in the background. I'm in my office/project room. So this is the quietest place in the house for me to do this and where my laptop and everything is set up. So first off, I am Mistress Sabine Lefebvre, and I am the current Kingdom Exchequer for Ansteora. I have been involved in the Exchequer off and on since I joined the SCA 15 plus years ago. My first office was a branch Exchequer for then Shire of Moonshadow, and I've been involved off and on throughout the years in various aspects of the Exchequer branch. I went from the local branch Exchequer to regional Exchequer, then became a training deputy under Celeste, and then stepped away to do some ANS and Seneschal responsibilities, then stepped back in to be Domesday, and then from Domesday to Kingdom Exchequer. So that's kind of a little bit of my involvement with the Exchequer office throughout the years. So this evening is mainly concentrating on the Domesday Exchequer deputy, and that is previously Domesday was completed by the Kingdom Exchequer, but it is such a large activity for a short amount of time that it was decided that a deputy, Domesday deputy, would be more advantageous to the kingdom. So first question is probably, what is Domesday? What we call Domesday is basically our consolidated end-of-year report for the entire kingdom. So it is the financial status for every group in our kingdom for a year period. So in January of 2021, we will start compiling and getting reports for every group in the kingdom for 2020 and taking all that data and information and placing it into a workbook, an Excel workbook that we receive from corporate. So that's basically what Domesday does, is they are data crunching a lot of figures from from every group within our kingdom and then feeding that information to corporate. In addition to that is their basic duty, but there are a lot of small tasks involved with that overall job function. So the local branches have until January 31st to turn in their end-of-year report. They turn in their end-of-year reports usually to regional, and we've asked them to also send that report to Domesday. Domesday will then take those reports and review them, go through them, make sure they balance, make sure that they aren't any standout anomalies that they see, and compare the start figure to last year's end figure. So they do a lot of validation of these individual reports. And then once they feel that the branch report is in good shape, they've gone through various validation steps, then they start importing that data into that larger Excel spreadsheet. All the while importing this data, they have another way of checks and balances to make sure, because that consolidated report has some checks in it as well, to make sure that when you finish entering everything in, that it balances. So it's a lot of activity in a small amount of time because, like as I mentioned, the branch officers turn in their end of year report by January 31st. Sometimes those can be a little late, but our consolidated report to Kingdom is due March 15th. So we basically have a month and a half to take approximately 30 groups reports, financial information for an entire year, enter it into this consolidated spreadsheet, make sure it balances, and then send it to corporate. So that's a lot of activity in a short amount of time. Things that the Domesday has done in the past to hopefully try and get ahead of the curve is we sometimes will ask for branches to send us their third quarter report so that we can start doing a review of everything from basically January 1st to the end of September. Go ahead and checking start numbers, go ahead and checking to make sure that any items that needed to be carried over from last year's reports have been carried over, make sure that the branches are balancing at least up to that date and that point. That allows us to head off some of those concerns prior to the branch officers completing their end of year, so that hopefully they can make the corrections in the last quarter so that the end of the year has less problems to trace down, again, because we are under such a time frame crunch. Domesday will also sometimes assist regional exchequers when branch exchequers have comments or about a particular group's report. Domesday can be a very valuable source as a second set of eyes if a group's not balancing or isn't sure where to put a particular expense or income and that kind of thing, because they do look at so many reports. They can be a valuable resource for that opportunity. And then that's the one thing that is different from Domesday than some of the other treasurer officers is Domesday does not deal with money at all. They do not handle any money whatsoever. They are basically a numbers, reports, data type of person. They are not responsible for processing any checks. They're not responsible for any writing any checks, doing any deposits or anything like that. They do not handle any money whatsoever. So that's another opportunity if you want to be involved in the exchequer branch, but don't want to have the responsibility of handling actual monies. This is a way that you can give service without being responsible for actual money handling. So that's basically the Domesday office. It is taking and compiling all of the individual branch reports into a larger, more complicated spreadsheet and sending that spreadsheet to corporate. Again, a lot of activity in a short amount of time, but it is, I actually really enjoy doing Domesday because I am very much a spreadsheet, numbers crunching, detail kind of person. And so I found the work in some ways very rewarding when I could take that individual group report, put it into the spreadsheet and see everything that needed to be balanced, or all of my system checks come across green. It was a very good feeling for me on a personal level to be like, hey. And then also that just knowing that that is a very big service and takes a very big weight off of the Kingdom exchequer to not have the additional responsibility of completing that report on top of everything else that's going on for the Kingdom exchequer. Because during that time, as Kingdom exchequer, I'm trying to get they're trying to get their end of the report completed and balanced and to Domesday. They're also possibly gearing up for Gulf Wars and handling things, as well as being a member of the Gulf Wars Financial Committee. They're also, we typically have Crown in January, so they have that transition that they're trying to assist with as well. So there's a lot of other duties going on for the Kingdom Exchequer that having this additional Doomsday deputy has taken quite a bit of a load off of them. And so that was another reason that I felt a little bit of personal satisfaction of being able to serve the kingdom within the Exchequer branch by knowing that that work is lessening somebody else's load. So does anybody have any questions so far? Sorry, I talk really fast sometimes, so I apologize.
This is Ragnar. So it basically sounds like it's more of an ARAP position where you're kind of reconciling your end of year. Is that what I'm getting?
Kind of. I mean, so each branch has their own reports that they've been doing on a monthly basis, and then and it's cumulative, so it goes from January 1st all the way to December 31st. And then at the end of the year, they send their reports to the Doomsday Exchequer, and they are taking that information and putting it into a larger spreadsheet, and then making sure that there's balances between the groups. So that's another thing that is a detailed task on the plate of the Doomsday. Is we have so many transfers in and transfers out between the individual groups and between the groups in the kingdom, and so they are then sorry, I also talk with my hands. They then take those transfers. If a group has a transfer out to kingdom, they need to verify that there's a transfer in on the kingdom's ledger. So they're also doing a lot of that cross
so
verification.
You're essentially reconciling debits and memos.
Right. You're basically reconciling all the financial activity within the kingdom of Ansteora.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. So you are taking, I think at last count, we were about 30, I want to say about 30 groups. So they are taking the individual reports from those 30 groups, putting them into a larger spreadsheet, making sure that spreadsheet balances, and then sending that spreadsheet to corporate so that corporate has the information for the entire kingdom. And then corporate has to take a lot of those kingdom reports, and I don't know if kingdom then has to take those kingdom reports and compile them into a larger spreadsheet for the entire SCA and Inc. Or if they leave them as individual kingdoms. I'm not privy to that information. I just know that we have a deadline that we're required to submit our kingdom report by to corporate so that they can do what additional they need to, and to get that information to the auditors.
So do they? And I'm sorry, I'm very new to SCA.
Oh no! Please feel free to ask any question.
So
That's how you learn.
Yeah, do they run on a fiscal year? And if they do, what is that fiscal year?
Our years for our financial year for the SCA is January 1st through December 31st. So
Okay,
yeah.
Because I didn't know, because the last company that I worked at, our fiscal year ran March to April, so it was a little offset so that you could still I'm sorry, April to March of the following year, so that you could get your quarters in there and then still have a little time before taxes came due to get all of that in.
My the company I work for, mundanely, our fiscal year is October 1st through September 30th. I always forget which months have 30 and which ones have 31. Right. Apologize. So we just, at my company, at the beginning of October, we started our fiscal year. So, and I'm a government, I work for a government contractor. So I know each company, a lot of companies have different periods for their fiscal year. SCA is January 1 to December. So they also run in parallel to a calendar year.
Okay, cool. Yeah. Oil and gas. So we like to have ours as soon as possible.
So yeah, that's what they run. And it is cumulative. So for me, All of the branches report on a monthly basis. I as well report on a monthly basis to the Crown and the Kingdom Seneschal, but my reports to corporate are only done on quarterly. So my report to corporate only goes out for the first quarter, second quarter, third quarter, and then end of year, even though I'm generating monthly reports to pass information, financial information up internally. Yes, I can.
We can
Sorry, I can barely hear you. A little bit.
Is there any way we can see what the worksheet looks like that Doomsday prepares for corporate?
Let me see if I can find that. It shouldn't take me very long. Give me just a sec. Sorry to keep you guys waiting. If you have other questions while I'm looking for this, I'm happy to answer it. And I'll see if I can find a copy of this spreadsheet real quick.
So I have a question for you.
Go right ahead.
So what would you tell someone who was interested in applying for the office?
So things that are, I don't like to use the word required, but in a lot of ways, Excel, having access to Excel would be required for this office because the spreadsheet that we do is in Excel, and the reports that we receive from the branch exchequers are most likely in Excel as well. So Excel has all the macros and all the calculating built into it. So access to Excel, which means hopefully you have access to a computer as well. Email, because the Doomsday does have their own email, and that's the way they would communicate with me. Well, with the Kingdom Exchequer, with the regional exchequers, and even the branch exchequers. So a computer with good internet, email access, Excel. If you have some previous exchequer experience on a local level or even at a regional level is beneficial because you've already seen the reports. So you can be familiar with the reports, the information that's put on the reports, where that information is located on the report. So having that knowledge is helpful. Not required, but it's helpful. I mean, you can learn it without having that experience. It would just be a little bit of more of a learning curve for you if you haven't seen the forms before. A willingness to work with people who may be a little bit frustrated. They've looked at their reports, they're having issues, they can't figure it out. You may be asking them questions and they have no idea what you're talking about. So a willingness to sit with someone and work through a report with them so that they understand where some of the information needs to be entered, where it may have been incorrectly categorized or things of that nature, which I know a lot of people, at least most of the exchequers that I've been associated with, either in a local or regional level, they're trying to do the job correctly. And when they run across hiccups, hopefully they're willing to reach out for the various resources. A lot of the regionals are very willing to sit and talk with a local. When I was Doomsday, I was very willing to sit and talk with them about their report forms, because sometimes it can be very daunting with the way SCA does some of our accounting. And in some aspects, Doomsday has to be, you have to be motivated on your own during that small amount of time, because like I said, we do have a fairly quick turnaround with our time frame. So self-motivating is also helpful. I think that's probably about all I can think of right at the moment. Hope that answers your question.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
You're welcome. And I'm looking for that report. So if you have other questions, please feel free to go ahead and ask.
So a potential, oh, go ahead.
Oh no, I was
Oh.
like, sorry, I'm trying to get to this workbook. I thought it would be easier to go through my emails and search for a particular thing, and it actually was. Go ahead with your question. Sorry.
Okay. So would you recommend that somebody have like professional accounting experience, or is that not really necessary?
I don't think that's necessary. I know there's been some advocacy that people have an accounting background, but then I've also heard that the SCA does their accounting so differently from standard accounting practices that sometimes that can be more of a detriment than an advantage. I personally, when I started in the Exchequer, I'm not an accountant mundanely. I manage my personal finances like most people do. I know how to read a bank statement. I know how to reconcile my checkbook. The general things. I know how to use Excel. I use Excel quite a bit personally. I use Excel probably more often than Word, just because of its functionalities. So I came into the Exchequer branch with no professional accounting experience, and was able to learn the reports and how they function and how they enter their debits and credits and things of that nature. So I'm kind of on the fence about that. I don't think that there's an advantage one way or the other, or a disadvantage one way or the other if you have some professional accounting experience.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, so I have found the workbook. Oh, and moving my camera doesn't help. That kind of, so do you have it where I can share the screen?
I have to make you the host. Give me
Okay.
just a second. I should have
No
done that
problem.
earlier.
Sabine,
Yes?
can you just send me a copy?
Well, I mean, we can look at it real quick. I don't mind showing it. This is, and I'll explain this because other people that are on might be interested in this as well. And what I'm going to show you isn't going to, let me go ahead and, okay, so what I'm showing you is, can you guys see an Excel form, a workbook? Okay. This, as you can see at the top, is labeled 2019 OnStiora Workbook. This is the consolidated workbook that comes to me from corporate. So there's very limited data that's been entered into this because this is before we've started entering the groups. So there's different tabs down at the bottom. The first one is just basic branch notes, where Mazel, who's our corporate accountant, has made some notes about changes that she made from the 2018 report, etc. So this is just a basic kind of communication page is the first one. And this validation page is kind of your checks and balances. As you can see, a lot of it says okay and some of it says not okay. And that's because nothing's been entered into this workbook really yet. So this is the page that I keep checking back anytime after when I was Domesday, I enter the information group by group. I don't move from one group to another until this report balances. That's how I know where I've made a mistake. So I do it group by group because and when I was Domesday, I always waited till the end to do Kingdom because Kingdom was so large and had so many transfers in and transfers out. So this kind of tells you how your spreadsheet is looking, how your workbook is looking. If everything is okay, then there's no out of balance, all these little things will be green. And so that's what the page I always used as my checks and balances to make sure that everything was going into the report okay. Second page is basically the comparative balance sheet for Onsteora. So it has on here, this is all of our information from 2016, 2017, 18, and then as you can see, 2019 is 0 on this because this was the workbook before we entered everything for 2019. And this is all information that feeds to this from other tabs, other pages in the workbook, other sheets in the workbook. So this is basically an overall snapshot of everything that's happened for the kingdom.
These numbers are all consolidations from the branches, right?
I'm sorry, what?
You hear me any better now?
A little bit. It's still very low.
Okay, it's not important.
I think he asked if the numbers were all consolidations from branches.
Yes, this page, not this page, this page is all the information for the entire kingdom, every branch within the kingdom. This is the snapshot of how the kingdom did for each of these years. And then there's a tab for all the groups that are in Oklahoma. So same thing, this is the snapshot for all the groups that are located in Oklahoma. And then a detail page. So this has all the information for every group that's located in Oklahoma. So you can see there's Eldrin, Moonshadow, North Keep. And then same thing for the branches located in Texas.
You literally mean in Oklahoma or northern region, which includes a little part of Texas.
Actually in Oklahoma, for the state of Oklahoma. So this is the balance sheet detail for all of the branches located in Texas. And then here as well, the next one is all of the branches located in Texas. As you can see, Bradley is listed on here, which is Bradley is part of the northern region, but they're a Texas branch. They're physically located in Texas, so they are on the Texas tab. So this information is at the top is all the information from 2018. So these are basically the start numbers for each of the group already located in this workbook when we receive it from corporate. And then this is the same categories that are listed on the individual group reports will be entered in for 2000 or were entered in for 2019. But the cash, so these are your ending balances basically from page 4 of the report. And then here's all of the fundraising, so your incomes, your expenses. As you can, for some of those have looked at the reports and done reports, a lot of this is going to look familiar. Like here's all the things that are at the bottom of page 4, your advertising, your food, whether it's administrative activity, etc. So this is where a majority of the data entry from the individual reports that you receive from the branches is put in. So as you can see, it's a lot of either copy and paste or pulling up their report and manually entering into here. And that's for, so here's Onsteora. So this information will be pulled from the report they received from the Kingdom Exchequer, and then every other branch located in Texas. And as you can see, it's a pretty lengthy little spreadsheet.
And so, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
So, when they send you their report, the report that they fill out, is that basically just a blank copy of the report form? And I ask that because then obviously when they have filled it out, then it would just be easier for you to copy and paste it directly onto this form and pull the information over. Or is it going to be a different form they're sending you where you have to search for it and put it in the actual columns and rows?
It is actually a different form. Sorry, I'm gonna jump over to Kingdom of Onsior webpage just real quick. Apologize for you guys having to view my screen there. Okay. The report that we get from, and I probably should have went to the SCA.org's website, but this'll work. And see, it links to. Okay. It's taking just a minute to download. So the report that they send to us, or that each branch exchequer completes. I'm waiting for Excel to open again. Thank you guys for being patient. Try and show you as much information as I can and answer your questions. So this is the actual report, financial report that each one of the local exchequers completes. So when I say page 4, it's just because I've looked at these reports a lot over the years. So I actually, for the most part, can tell what information goes on what page or what page the information's coming from. So like, when I was talking about expenses, they're all located down in this section here. So Domesday, to enter that information on that larger spreadsheet, they will look in this box here to find all the expenses a particular group has. So it's not in the exact same format as the consolidated report that we send to corporate. So there is sometimes a little bit of hunting for some things, but for the most part, they've tried to make it to where you can go through each page of the report forms that the local branches use and just copy and paste or enter the data almost directly from a couple of pages in this workbook. So laid out a little bit differently in format, but the category names and things of that nature are the same. So get back. Of course, it's being in the way. So, and that's sometimes what a majority, I say majority, that's where a lot of the effort on the Domesday is that just transferring of information from those report forms into this spreadsheet. Fortunately, it does transfer over, like I said, everything has the same category names, so it does transfer over fairly easily. What mainly happens for Domesday, or where Domesday spends some of their time, is that validation of transfers in and transfers out between groups to make sure that those match up and are reconciled. Also, some of what Domesday will spend their time on is if something's possibly been miscategorized. That's why the branch exchequers, treasurers will send not only their report, but they'll send a copy of their report, a copy of their bank statement and a copy of their ledger, their ledger. Because with those three pieces of information, it really helps the Doomsday be able to figure out if they run across an issue, that they can sometimes work it out by viewing those documents without having to contact the actual local branch person. Usually, the few years that I've done Doomsday and that I've helped with Doomsday, some of our major hiccups with getting the report completed is just late reports, communication, just the time it takes sometimes for someone to return an email response. And then occasionally there's the not balancing of a report or something being just slightly entered incorrectly. Generally, most groups go into this report relatively quickly and easily. And it usually comes down to maybe a quarter of the groups that may require some additional effort to possibly correct an issue that's seen. But yeah, it is time consuming to some degree, but usually it's just a lot of data transfer. Down at the bottom, there's a lot of other tabs. This has some of their bank information, page that lists all the depreciables that everybody has on file. So it goes pretty quickly from just everything. And once you're and that's why I say having some experience with the branch report form helps with this, because of the categories being the same and things transitioning over into the same categories on this larger spreadsheet. So, and what I did when I was Doomsday is not only did I enter groups individually and make sure that my validation page was showing up green before I went on to another group, is in an effort to try and stay ahead of it and make sure that I could hopefully make the deadline, is as I got a group's report in, I tried very much to go ahead and review that report, make sure I didn't have any immediate questions or anything immediately that stood out to me that I needed to work with the branch exchequer to resolve, and then go ahead and enter that group in to this larger spreadsheet as quickly as possible. That way I was doing, and depending on how the reports were coming in, I could do 1 or 2 reports a day and then only have the problematic reports to work towards the latter part of the time frame.
So since this, I'm assuming this, you guys are looking for a deputy position for the Doomsday person.
The office is currently open for applications, and the application process is going to run through the 15th of this month. Unless, depending on how many applicants apply, it may get extended, but the office is currently open for applications.
No, you're looking for a deputy position, so I would assume the deputy would just be doing most of the data entry, and then the actual Doomsday clerk would be going in to do the more in-depth things, or is it going to kind of be like a 50-50 split between how you want each one handling it?
Actually, the Doomsday deputy is a deputy to the Kingdom Exchequer, so I'm actually looking for someone to complete the entire report. I currently have Mistress Elsa von Samich is our current Doomsday deputy. So she is the one who will be compiling this report, entering all the group financial information for 2020 into this workbook and sending it to corporate next spring. So I'm looking for someone to come in and shadow underneath her as she does the report for 2020. And then that person will then be responsible for, so I guess in a way I'm looking for a deputy under the Doomsday deputy right now to work with her to learn the report and how it functions. And then for that person to then be the actual Doomsday deputy under the Kingdom Exchequer for 2022 and 2023. So how's best to work this office is to have someone come in as a deputy underneath the current Doomsday person, shadow with them during one cycle or one entry into this workbook, then to be the Doomsday deputy under the Kingdom Exchequer on their own for a year, and then hopefully for them to go ahead and find a replacement that would shadow under them the second year of their warranted term. Does that make a little bit more sense?
Yes, ma'am, it does. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. That's how we're trying to work it. It doesn't necessarily always work out that way. That's how it worked with me as Doomsday, as I actually shadowed under the person who was actually the warranted officer and who was responsible for completing the workbook and sending it to corporate. I worked under them, and I did we did work it out to where it's like, okay, I will enter this group, and this group, and you'll enter this group, and this group. And that way it gave me the opportunity to get familiar with the workbook, how things went into the workbook, how to use that validation page and things of that nature. So we kind of worked a little bit in tandem while I was shadowing. And then I actually did the job for 2 years. So I was responsible for the workbook, entering everything on my own for 2 years because just of how things lined up. Fortunately, I was able to find someone, actually, Mistress Sabine, the previous Kingdom Exchequer, she moved into the role of Doomsday when I stepped into this office. Our hope was to have someone shadow with her last year and actually be taking over the responsibility for this year. That just hasn't happened. So our time frame got pushed back a little bit. So now we're looking for, have opened the position to have someone come in and shadow with her and then take over the position after that. And one thing I want to kind of, I don't know if we need to talk about the workbook anymore, so I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen there. One thing I want to point out, not just only for this office, but for all the other offices within the Exchequer branch, and I would think that this would also go for a lot of the other branches in the SCA, is there are people who have done for most jobs, people have done the office before. They're a valuable resource, and most of them, if you reach out, are very willing to help. I help, even though I was Kingdom Exchequer, I was still working with Elsa on Doomsday because I had just stepped out of that, and she wasn't necessarily quite as familiar with it as I had been because she hadn't actually shadowed as much. And there were times even after I shadowed and took over Doomsday that I still had questions and asked the previous Doomsday before me, and he was very willing to assist. So there are a lot of people, like I said, who have held the office before and that are very willing to be a resource and very willing to help you out. So one thing I kind of maybe not necessarily, I encourage people to reach out to those that have held the positions before if they run into anything where they need some help or need to talk through something in relation to the office, and not to be afraid to do that. There are a lot of people who there's no reason to feel that you should struggle with something in an office on your own. Make sure you just reach out because the resources are there. And you know, if even after stepping out of Kingdom Exchequer, and even if I've been out of kind of the Exchequer branch for a few years, and there's a Doomsday person that comes into the office and sees that I was or knows that I was a past Doomsday, and they have questions and they reached out to me, I would be more than willing to work with that person and answer any questions they might have. Because I know some of these positions can be very challenging, and just having that safety net can really be helpful.
Beatrix wrote in the chat she was sorry, but she had to leave. But thank you for the class and the great information.
Awesome. So there are several more pages of that workbook, but it basically are the same. A lot of the pages in the consolidated workbook line up with the pages or sheets within the individual reports. And I know that the workbook can be fairly daunting when you first open it up and you look at it and you see all the worksheets at the bottom and how many groups are there and that kind of things. But if you just start taking them one by one, once you kind of get into a rhythm, it isn't quite as daunting.
Yes, spreadsheets are amazing. I love them.
I use Excel for all kinds of things. I use Excel for my personal budget. I use Excel for making lists. I use Excel. I mean, I use Excel way more than I do Word. I use Excel a lot in my mundane job. I like Excel. It's just something that I'm just so familiar with, having used it not only personally, but in my mundane job, and then having used it quite a bit as well through the SCA over the years with the Exchequer branch. It has a lot of built-in, or a lot of tools you can use within it. And I think that's why the SCA gravitated towards using Excel for the monthly report forms that the groups use and for this consolidated worksheet, because it has the ability for them to build in a lot of formulas and macros and things of that nature. I know there's some people, I know that unfortunately Excel is, all of this being in Excel is frustrating to Mac users. I know they have some difficulty with it, but unfortunately when these things were developed, Mac was not as prevalent as it is today. Because some of these report forms have been in use for quite a while. They've been updated for various things, but the basic forms have been in use for a while.
A $12 subscription to Office 360, you'll have seamless integration with Excel.
Yeah. So, and I'm just such a Windows user anyway. I've never gravitated towards Macs. I'm not used a Mac, so I unfortunately can't speak to the issues that they have when trying to use the report.
I do everything from my iPad, so Office 360 has been a godsend.
So the Doomsday is one of those offices, if you, again, are a detailed person, want to give service, but have been afraid of the Exchequer branch because of actually dealing with money, physically dealing with money. This is an office that kind of lends to that type of individual, because you do not deal with handling money at all.
Awesome. Well,
Any
we
other
are
questions?
about at the end of our time. We have about 5 minutes left. So yeah, does anybody have any last questions?
And if you think of any questions after this, the Kingdom Exchequer email is on, of course, the Kingdom webpage. You are more than welcome to reach out to me with any questions you might think of about this position, or even just the Exchequer branch in general after this. Please feel free to reach out to me. I will answer questions to the best of my ability, and if it's something that is I haven't had before or I need to find out, I'll be more than happy to research it.
And where does one go to apply?
They just started a new kind of application process. And since I haven't needed to apply for a position yet, I haven't gone through this process. So
I'm sorry.
no, you're fine. I know it's under. I'm looking on the website real quick so I can maybe find it for you. So give me a sec. Oh, if you go to, let me just. I'm going to double check this. Okay, real quick, because like I said, they've just recently kind of created a new position within the seneschalate. I don't know her actual. She's kind of like does an HR function for applicants. So on the Kingdom of Anstiora, under the office of the seneschal, there's an apply for office little link tab button. I don't know what to call some of these sometimes. That you can actually submit an online application, or you can print the paper application form. And so although it's saying no open positions right now, which I know is not true, because I have a position open. I know there's some other positions open, but here's where you can submit an online application for the office. Just your personal information, member, just all the information, the group you belong to, the position you're being applied for this one. I would mark it as Kingdom, and then put Domesday Deputy in this location here. And then it automatically on the back end gets forwarded to me. But if you want to send additional copies to anybody that's not associated with the particular office, like some local officers, they may want to send a copy to their B&B, and some other things. You can enter additional emails to send a copy of the application to. Then here's where you kind of list your previous positions held, if you have any current positions, and what you feel your qualifications are. So these are the exact same sections that are listed in the paper application. They've just now put it all online so that it can be submitted in a little bit quicker time fashion. And since so many people are now, we do less and less mailing of things, and we do so much online that they've now moved it to this kind of a format. So that's where you can go and apply for any position that you're interested in, whether it be local level, regional level, or kingdom level. You can apply here.
Awesome, thank you.
Oh, you're very welcome. I haven't needed to use that yet, so I know it's something Mistress Mafanwe volunteer. I don't know exactly what her mundane job is, but I think she has some a human resources background in her mundane career, and she suggested this to the Kingdom Seneschal, and they decided that it would be a good position to add to their branch. So she advertises on the Kingdom of Anstiora Facebook page. She usually around the first of the month, she might just be a few days late, will post what offices are currently open for application and when their closing dates are, so that everybody's aware of what's open for applications. So that's been, so far, I think it's been working really well to have that additional position. And that's one of the things that I will say about the SCA is we don't necessarily like to be officer heavy, but when we do see that there's a need for an additional position within a branch, it's nice that they're willing to listen and implement additional offices if they feel it's going to be of value. And that's something I as well, as Kingdom Exchequer, I'm currently evaluating the possibility of adding another deputy that actually isn't involved in handling money, is more of an administrative function within the Exchequerate. So just to facilitate some of the paperwork that needs to occur within our treasurer exchequer offices. So, but yeah, I think it's nice that they added the online application. It is a lot cleaner and a lot more fluid than the application process used to be.
Definitely. Yeah, I agree. All right, guys. Well, it is 8 o'clock. So if nobody has any other questions, or Sabine, did you have anything else to add?
No, again, if you have any questions at all about the Exchequer branch or the Domesday office in general, or any of the other Exchequer offices, please feel free to ping me through the Exchequer email, and I will answer those as quickly as I can.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you so much for teaching. I really appreciate it.
Oh, no problem. I want to get the word out because I know the Exchequer branch is one of the more intimidating branches of the SCA because of the money aspect. But with this position, again, it doesn't handle money. So it's a way for someone to give service. And I actually enjoyed my time as Domesday. So
Yeah, it does sound like it would be one of the more interesting positions. So
it is. And one of the less well-known ones as well. It's not one that somebody immediately thinks about.
Yeah, definitely. All right, guys. Well, I hope everybody has a good rest of your evening, and I will talk to you all again soon, I'm sure.
Thank you.
See you later.
Good night.
Thanks, everybody who attended. Good night.